What's up guys, welcome back to another GGF video, and today I'll be taking a look at two new products from LIAN LI. We have the EDGE PSU and also the HYDROSHIFT all-in-one cooler. Now these have been announced for quite a while now. All the way at the start of the year we had the LIAN LI Digital Expo that was online. I was lucky enough to be invited to that, so I saw these in person there. And then also a few weeks ago we saw these at Computex. Now it's going to be a little bit tricky because I only have one of each. So I've got the build over here. I've had to test all these in terms of fitment, playing around with the software, some new things with the PSU. It has the USB hub, which I also had to play around with. And then also the all-in-one cooler has the tubes that are being routed instead of at the front or at one end. They're now routed still on the front, but they don't come down and hang along. They are sort of side mounted on the front. They go along the back of the radiator and then pop down for a really clean, minimal tubeless look. So I think I'll start with the all-in-one cooler first. So I'm just going to go through a lot of the options you get with these coolers. There are three models. I'll go over any issues I had, any things I didn't really like, some things I did like, and so on. Then I'll move to the PSU. Then I'll talk about the build itself, things like how easy was it to install the all-in-one cooler. Is it worthwhile with this tubing like this? Can it be mounted anywhere else? Because the tubing isn't shorter, it's just running along the back. That makes it shorter on the run when it comes out like this. And then also the PSU, because it's got that funky step down, and then all of your ports are sort of facing you once you install it in a case like this. This is the Evo, so it is good for a dual chamber case. If you put it in a traditional case, it's going to be a little bit funky because technically it would be upside down and it wouldn't work if it went in a normal traditional case. Like, it would work, but all your ports would be upside down and it would just be a bit of a mess. Now, starting with the all-in-one cooler, there are three models. This is the 360 TL, of course, being TL, which is the one I have here. It comes with the newish, I would say, TL fans. They're not the LCD, they're just the standard TL RGB fans, and that does come with the controller. It's the only model in the all-in-one cooler HYDROSHIFT range that comes with the controller, so that will be a little bit more expensive. All three models do come with a screen. The screen is a 2.88 inch, so basically 2.9 inch IPS screen, 480 by 480 and 500 nits. Had to play around with their software. Screen looks really cool. There's a lot of things you can do with that, and there are some new 3D themes you can do, and there's sensor reacted visual effects, so they can react with the themes as well, which is pretty neat. So in terms of the models on the all-in-one cooler, so the 360 TL and the 360R are kind of similar in terms of the radiator and pump setup. They use the same pump and the same radiator. Now the 360S uses a different pump and a slightly thinner radiator. Now these are LIAN LI's own in-house, or from what I've been told, and the performance is what they're saying on par or slightly a little bit better. So the 360 TL and the 360R, so the TL with the TL fans, the R has non-TL fans, no controller. They're more of your standard RGB fans. Unfortunately, I only have the TL, so I'm just gonna have to throw some images of what LIAN LI has the other two all-in-one coolers up so you can see. So yeah, that's sort of a trimmed down version for the fan side. And then the 360S, as I said, has the slightly different pump. It's apparently a smaller pump. It's got a thinner radiator, and then it also has non-RGB fans. But interesting, those fans are more their performance fans. So all the three fans on all of these three models are 28 millimeters thick. So that's something to keep in mind. And on the 360 TL and the 360R, the radiator is 31 millimeters thick. So keep that in mind, because if you go up the TL or the R, the radiator combo and fans come in at 59 millimeters thick. So it's basically 60 millimeters thick you will need for clearance at the top. Obviously in a case like this, you have no issues. There is plenty of clearance. And then on the 360S, the radiator is your more traditional 27 millimeter thick. And then the 28 millimeter fans, you come in at 55 millimeters thick. And then the fins per inch on the TL and the R are 21. And then on the 360S is 20. So that's nothing here or there. Now, one thing I do want to mention straight away are case limitations. Now, obviously with a all-in-one cooler like this, it's intended to be done like this, and that's the way I've routed it here. You can route it on the side. LIAN LI has demoed this with you taking it off here, and the actual this end here goes at the bottom, and then the tubes run up the side and then into the sort of the CPU area with the water block and the screen here. But to me, I think this is the best orientation. It does look a little bit weird the other way, although apparently the other way is probably one of the better ways to run it. But I'd say here or there, there's not going to be really any difference. People do say running their all-in-one cooler in different orientations, you're going to get longer lifespan out of it, unless it's in the very bottom like this and it's looping up. That's like the worst position. There's not going to be any issue if it's here or if it's on the side and so on. But yeah, I just don't like the aesthetic of it running on the side at the bottom, because then you have the tube. Now, there are some flexibility options with how the all-in-one cooler is done with up here with the routing. You can actually spin the tubing around. So this one comes out the backside and then runs along and down. You can undo all of this. This is a clip that just comes off. They do provide another clip so it can swing the other way. So the bracket would come out here and then it would run along here. So your tubing can run down here. So if you wanted to spin your all-in-one cooler around, so you could have this area at this side, you could run it down the back and then down. And that's also the same thing you can do with the side. Now, one thing I do want to get out of the way first is, I'm not sure if you picked this up already, but I did notice a bit of a greenish tinge on the tubing. Now, I'm sure the black one would be fine, but when I looked at the review guide for this, it seems like they're using clear tubing under this sleeve. Now, I must say this sleeve is very nice. They do say the tubing is server grade. I did reach out to LIAN LI about this and they said no one really picked this up, but even looking at this now, I can see that this tubing has a bit of a green tinge. That's because the coolant color is green. Now, I think they could have probably rectified this with two ways. Obviously, one, they could have gone with a more solid color tubing if it was like a white or something. Obviously, they don't want anything too dark because then it's going to affect the white sleeving on the outside. Or two, they could have tried to go with a lighter coolant inside, maybe a more clearer, but that's completely up to them. And that's how they've gone down that route. But in an all white build like this, it actually looks a little bit more greener the more light you have. So if you have a very well lit PC area, or your studio or your office, your gaming area is very well lit, you can see the green. But once the system's on and you have a heap of RGB in the system, it's hard to see the actual greenish on the tubing. But I just wanted to get that out of the way, just in case you're wondering if it was my filming or the way I've got that shot there. Another case limitation, obviously this is the Evo, that's the best option for this. The other issue, or I wouldn't say the issue, the other thing you need to make sure of is the top area up here. So this is a 360. You need to have room for 140mm fans. Obviously, because the radiator has the tubing going down the side, it is going to be a bit wider. So as long as you can fit 140mm fans at the top, you don't need to have mounting for 140. You just need that gap for the tubing to run down the side. So just make sure you have that. Now, one thing I do like, I think LIAN LI have done this quite a bit now, they come with the fans pre-installed on their all-in-one coolers, which I think is really good, especially having these daisy chainable fans. You don't need these all separate in a box. You don't need to open it up. I just think the installation experience is much easier. It's much cleaner having the fans already installed on the all-in-one cooler. I've already mentioned the pump, the two different ones. The TL and R use the same, the S uses the slightly smaller one, and they say the performance on the TL and the R is just a fraction better than on the S. The option to remove the tubing left and right, I've mentioned. I'm not really going to show that on film because it does take a little bit of work, but the manual does state that you just remove this plastic clip. There's some little brackets on that kind of guide the tubing. You just undo those, spin the tubing over, and then just put it back together. One other neat little thing, I can probably take this off now, is you might be wondering, you can't see any of the screw covers or screw tops that holds the sort of the screen down or the block down, because there is a magnetic plastic cover. This is the same on the black model, and this just clips on. And I think that just neatens it up nicely, and then you don't get to see all of those ugly sort of washers, springs, and so on that screws everything down. I mentioned the LCD, had to play around with the software, no issues there. One thing to note with the TL series, especially with LCDs and their LIAN LI software, never plug them into port 1 on their controller. So same with these fans, I've used their LCD fans on the side. Don't plug them in port 1. Same with this here, anything that has an LCD with LIAN Li, make sure it's plugged into say port 2, 3 or 4. The LCD will come on, but it will have a static LIAN Li logo and you cannot change it. So make sure you put it in anything other than port 1. Now moving on to the PSU, I'll just grab the box for that. I will cover prices and all that at the end. I'll go over the build as well. Now, unfortunately with the PSU, it's a little bit tricky. It is around the back. I don't really want to spin this around, but I do have a heap of B-roll. So this is the EDGE 1000, which is my model. It comes in 850, 1000, and 1300. Now, first off, I want to talk about case limitations. Now, that will be something to keep in mind with this unit, because obviously the PSU does look like this. It's got this bump. All your connectors are on here, so you got all your rows here. So when it's installed in your system like this, it's going to be hard because it's facing me. This is all facing out towards you. This is your fan here. And in a traditional case where your PSU slides in the bottom, your fan here, technically it would be like this. And then these are all your ports. So technically it could still be done. It's just going to be hard to get to all your connectors. So definitely this unit is designed for a dual chamber case. Now it's not just for LIAN Li cases, any dual chamber case, I can't see an issue with this PSU. Now obviously I haven't tested every case out there, but from what I can see, there's no difference with the installation for this. I had no issues installing it. It's actually smaller in terms of, I wouldn't really say volume, but in terms of cable management, I've compared it to another brand PSU. This one's an 850, so this one's less wattage, and you can see the edge just takes up less room, especially with that the connector plane. It's only, I would say, about this thick. I'd say probably 1 inch to half an inch. It's not very big, and then your cables can just be plugged right in, and then you have more room for cable management. Now, one thing I also had with the PSU, I did find that the unit is a little bit purple. Sometimes with LIAN Li white, it's never exactly white. So if you do see on film that it does look a little bit purple, that's because the PSU did have that purplish tinge, and then also the connectors. Now, I think they've tried very hard to get the connectors white. Now, I reached out to them about this as well. I said it's very, very hard to get white connectors. Now, these do look a little bit purplish. I don't know if you can see that here, but I do have some B-roll to throw up. So the sleeve is really nice. I really like the sleeve. Now all the cables come with cable combs, all your main ones, your EPS, you get 2 of those, your 24 pin, and then your 12 volt high power also comes with cable combs. That's nice. They are removable as well. It looks like they just snap on. But yeah, the connectors are just a little bit too purple for me. Now, I want to know your thoughts. I don't think any other PSU brands actually do full white connectors. I know Zeus on their white Strix ones, those ones are gray, and I think on their white Loki, that's gray. So they've avoided it by doing it that way. Other brands, I'm trying to think, use white sleeve, but then the connector is black. Now I'm thinking, do we actually need to have white connectors? Because most boards that are all white, even on something like the Asus Formula, the original Asus C790 Apex, the board was all white, but all the connectors are still black. Like this board is a bit of a white theme board. The EPS are black. Well, I got that silver metal brace around it, which is meant to sort of strengthen it a bit, but the 24 pin is black. Even the connector on this 4080 Super Strix is black. So it doesn't probably need to be white. So they could have just gone black, and then you won't really notice, because once it plugs in, it just looks a little bit bigger than the black connector. One thing with the 12 volt high power, that is a different connector altogether. So that uses a different material. I think it's to do with the temp and things like that on the 12 volt high power. They actually said, well, how does it look like on the 12 volt? Is it the same as the rest of the connectors? And I said, no, that actually does look white. It matches the GPU perfectly. And I can feel that is a different material than the one on the connectors. But I just wanted to bring that up in case you wanted to know about that. And if you saw it in my video and you're wondering why, hey, I'm the only one that's mentioned it, or why does it look a little bit purple in my build? And then also same with the actual non-sleeve peripherals. Now these ones aren't too bad because you're not really going to see these. All your peripherals, your SATA, your non-sleeve cables normally go around the back. So that's not a big deal, but yeah, I just wanted to mention that. One thing I did like as well is you get 6 CPU/PCIe connectors on the PSU. Now that's not 6 separate, so not 6 CPU or 6 PCI separate for 12. They're all shared. So 6 I think is a good amount because you need 2 for your EPS. Obviously NVIDIA card, you're fine. You've got the one 12 volt high power that uses the latest spec, but someone with an AMD card, a beefy card, needs 3 8-pin. So you're already using 2 for your EPS, 3 for your beefy AMD card, that's 5. And now you may need a 6 because a lot of RGB controllers like these TL ones, I know Corsair are doing this as well. You need 6-pin PCIe to power those because obviously SATA is not enough. SATA can do like, I think like 75 watts, something like that. Maybe a bit less. Molex can do like 150. So that's why some controllers have been having 2 SATAs. That gets a bit messy. So now brands are moving to doing 6-pin PCIe. So you need 6 on your PSU. Now all of the ones that LIAN Li do are not breakout, so that's pretty good. So you're not getting the ones where it runs off a 8 and then breaks off into 8. So these are all 1-to-1 straight to 8, which is good. But I wanted to mention that up. So I can't see you having any issues with these PSUs having the 6 CPU and PCIe connectors. One interesting touch, I can actually just pull this out now. You might be wondering, why is the 12 watt high power end blue? Well, this is just a visual aspect to help you when installing the connector, because we all know the issue with not plugging this all the way. So the aim behind this is, obviously if it's plugged in not all the way, I'll get some close-up B-roll if I can even get this back in, you can see some blue. Now that stands out and you know that, hey, I haven't pushed that in all the way. Once you push this in like so, the blue should disappear. Now it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's just one way LIAN Li has tried to eliminate any issues on not plugging in that connector all the way. So that is a nice touch there. Obviously you're not going to see the blue anywhere else except before you plug it in, and once it's in, it's completely gone. Now I mentioned this at the, if anyone watched the LIAN Li Digital Expo, I'll just put this down, that surprisingly how long we've had SATA for, can't remember now, probably like 15 years maybe, I could be completely wrong, but they've got a few different SATA leads. Now this build here needed one SATA connector, and that was just the, I'm assuming that's the RGB power from the case. So you got the RGB and then one SATA cable came out. That's probably just for the RGB control on the front. So I just needed one. So imagine running this in your case. That's not even a standard one. This is like your standard traditional SATA. Like this is long as you got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you got this length. So I would have to scrunch all this up inside the case. Now there is a third cable which is inside. I'm not going to pull it out. And then you've got this one here. This one's kind of new. Now I don't know what every brand is doing for power supplies these days, but I haven't seen any that have been doing things like this in terms of cables. Now this is a Y splitter, so this is handy. So it's got 2 at this end, 2 at this end. So if you've got say a larger case, obviously a case like this, I don't think this is too large. This probably won't be needed, but you can run say 2 off to somewhere, say the front area, and then you've got 2 here that can stay closer to the PSU once you route it. So that's a good option there. And then the other one, which is inside here, which I think is really good, it's just a short lead which has a bank of 4 really close together. So it almost looks like a little breakout, like a little outlet, a power strip, and you can just connect 4 onto that. Now I have sort of stuck that on the back because I just needed 1. So I stuck it behind the motherboard tray, and then I have direct access for those 4. So actually you get quite a lot of SATA. You get 4, then 4, and then 4. So you do get the 4, 8, and 12 all up, which is nice. And then Molex, obviously they didn't go down that route for Molex because not many people are using Molex, so it's just a more traditional standard long run with 1, 2, 3, 4 Molex. Now one other feature on the EDGE PSU is that it has a built-in USB hub. Now if you followed the LIAN Li Digital Expo or any other content on this PSU, you probably already knew this already. So basically it's got a 4-port USB hub. That is on the, I would say, the more traditional side of the PSU. So where your connectors are here on this step down bit, you've got the 4-port USB hub on the side. Now that's all good and well until you start wanting to run more, I would say, high powered devices. Obviously, you're not going to run it to something like your cases front panel, although I haven't seen any that uses the standard USB 2 anyway. So you're probably not gonna be able to connect it up. All the front panel cases do use USB 3, but anything else that may need something that's more high power. Now, I did have an issue with the TL controller, plugging it into the USB port on the internal one on the PSU. So I had the motherboard internal header going out into the back, into the in on the PSU, and then just the USB 1 connector from the TL going into one port on the USB hub on the PSU. And the issue I had is I could not get the bottom LCD fan in this build to work. It would show up with just a static LIAN Li logo, but nothing else. It wouldn't show up in the software, just the top two. So the issue is that, especially with these TL LCD fans, just the LCD only, is each fan has a built-in hub. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4 hubs. This is the hub. So anything LIAN Li with an LCD in it is a hub. So I have 4 hubs right there. And when I was replugging the USB back in and out within Windows, it was saying I've used too many hubs. I've used 5, which is the maximum I can use. Now, that could be two things. It could be a Windows limitation, or it could also be a limitation with this motherboard. Now, all motherboards are different. I reached out to LIAN Li about this, and they said, yes, they've had experienced different things with different brands of boards, Intel chipset, AMD chipset, and also depends on what controller that is. So that's just one thing to note, that some controllers may not work on this USB hub. Obviously, a lot of RGB controllers, I don't see too much of an issue. It's just that if the hub has like another hub built in that you're running it off. So we've got the 1 hub there and then the 3 on the side, but there is a way around that. LIAN Li have probably thought about this. So they include a little PCIe bracket that goes in the back. It's got a little notch out of it. And instead of running the lead to the internal header at the bottom of the board, they give you a lead to run your USB from the PSU out the back into your motherboard. So that USB could possibly be routed differently to the internal one on the inside of the motherboard. As soon as I plugged it into a standard red SS10, so like a 10 gig port, I did that in Windows, plugged it in, all the fans worked. I had no issues at all. It just looks a little bit messy running it out the back, but that guaranteed that I was able to use the port on the PSU to get the TL controller working. Obviously, if you've got a build like this and you only have one USB device, you probably don't really need to run the USB hub on the back. You could just plug the TL controller straight into the motherboard, because here I'm basically going from the motherboard to a hub and then the hub to the TL controller, which isn't really needed. It'd be more for those who have more than one device, or something in a smaller case where you're running ITX and you can still manage to fit this large PSU in, or MATX if for some reason your board only has one USB 2 header instead of the 2 at the bottom. I think that's pretty much it for all of this. Installing the PSU, installing the all-in-one cooler, no issues at all. Obviously, I can't test. I would have liked to have tested more cases, different designs and how it's done, but I just couldn't go through everything, different brands. If you want to know more on the sort of installment on both of these items, if you want me to test more cases, maybe I can work with LIAN Li and do a more of a case study on which cases work, which cases are better, which ones don't work. Obviously, anything that's not a dual chamber for your PSU is going to be a bit weird, because it's not going to be sort of right in your face with the connectors to plug it in. All-in-one cooler, I don't see too much of an issue with most cases, as long as you have that width down the side. Now, before I turn this on, I just want to get some shots of a bit of a cinematic setup of how this system looks. Now, I don't really do all-in-one cooler builds, but I want to know your thoughts on how it looked. I keep on moving these 24-pin cable combs because they keep going out of line. But yeah, I want to know your thoughts on how this looks, what you think about the cable management around the back. I think it looks pretty good. I didn't spend too much time on it, but I think it worked good. So let's have a look at some of the B-roll on this build. So that was the final build there. Overall, I think it came out pretty good. It didn't take me long at all to build the system. I would say within 30 minutes, I'd say 10 to 15 minutes of cable managing it all. The longest time I took in this review was moving the all-in-one cooler from the top to the side, back to the top, filming all the different areas and so on. Now, in terms of price for these units, the HYDROSHIFT, so there is the 360 TL black and white, the 360R black and white, and the 360S black and white. Obviously, I said earlier the TL is going to be more expensive. So the black and the white models are the same price through all of the three different ones. So the TL is $260 US, the R is $199, so $200 US, and then the S is the $180 US, which is the non-RGB for any of those guys who want to go for non-RGB. So just to clarify, the TL is the only one that has the controller. It's just your standard TL V2 controller that runs in the back there. I actually mounted it up at the top of the drive cage to get it out of the way, and then I stuffed the cables into one of the drive cages to clean it up a little bit. The other two don't run the controller. You just have standard RGB output. You have standard fan output for PWM control. So the TL is the only one with the controller. Now the EDGE pricing, we have the 1300 watt. Now these ones do change depending on the color of the PSU. I'm not sure why the color affects the price on the PSU, but not the all-in-one cooler, but that's just what it is. So for the EDGE 1300 watt white is $240 US. For the 1300 watt black, the price is $230 US, so $10 difference. For the EDGE 1000 watt in the white is $200, and then for the black in the 1000 watt is $190. So once again, the $10. And then for some reason, the EDGE 850 only comes in black, or that's all the information I've been provided, is only the black model comes in at $150 US. So overall, not too bad. So pretty much this video wasn't about testing the PSU. I don't really review PSUs. I don't test them. I don't do all of that. And then same with the all-in-one cooler. I don't really test all-in-one coolers. I don't have a database of all-in-one coolers. But if I go all the way up here, they are saying that the performance of the TL and the R, the pump is better than in their previous Galahad 2 Trinity. And they say the performance on the TL and R and even the S performs slightly better than their previous 360 all-in-one cooler, which is the Galahad 2 Trinity, and then also the LCD models as well. So that is good to see. But anyway, I think that's it for this video. I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank LIAN LI for sending these out for me to play around with, and I'll see if I can use this PSU in more of my builds. For custom cables, I'll see if any of the guys will be able to get the pin out to do more custom cables, because I would say these would probably be the only let down at the moment, having this kind of purplish looking connector, although you can't really see it too bad. I'm really skeptical about how the insides look in a build, and I think having this purple, even me knowing that they're this kind of color, it just sort of sets it off a little bit. But yeah, if we could get some custom cables from different brands, although I know LIAN LI are probably hating me saying this, they've gone to a lot of work to get this sleeve really nice, but I always do like my custom cables. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for watching. I want to thank LIAN LI for sending these out to check out, and we'll see you in the next one.